Stephen Ireland, founder of Pride in Surrey, has been jailed for the rape and abuse of a 12-year-old boy, crimes that many believe could have been prevented. Concern about Ireland's conduct were raised as early as 2021, including warnings about his self-appointed role as a safeguarding lead, his relationship with an 18-year-old boy, actually just an 18-year-old, and him sending sexually explicit material at Pride events. Whistleblowers who tried to raise the alarm were met with resistance, bans and legal threats. One of those on the wrong end of Ireland's threats was the LGB Alliance. When, in 2021, Ireland wrote a furious letter to a charity commission saying that the LGB Alliance should not have charitable status and was a very dangerous organisation. Turns out that he was a very dangerous individual. To discuss this difficult story is Kate Harris from the LGB Alliance. Welcome to the show, Kate. The whole story is, of course, horrible. But when you read about how there were people, whistleblowers, raising concerns years before this came to light. Can you just tell us about that first of all, some of these whistleblowers and their stories?
I can. I've been working with several of them over the last few weeks leading up to the sentencing last Monday. But before we talk about any of that, I just want to take a moment to think about the courage it took for the 12-year-old boy who was raped, who was given crystal meth, who was abused, whose trust was destroyed by Stephen Ireland. He had the courage not only to speak to his teacher, but to go to the police. And I think this case raises so many horror stories. But at the heart of it is this one boy we know about, but we suspect there may be many others. But I really think he deserves a huge amount of credit for the courage and the guts that took, which ended up in this evil man being sentenced to 30 years and his sidekick, David Sutton, to 4.5 years. So let's never forget that that was a real kid who was involved in this. And secondly, I want to thank the Surrey Police under Chief Constable Tim DeMeyer, who saw this difficult case through. And in addition, a group called Women of Surrey, who became a kind of citizen reporting group and sat through every single day of what was the most appalling evidence, unbelievable evidence, the things that are now coming out in public, you literally would not be able to make up. These are the things that the worst possible nightmares are made of. And this was the life of Stephen Ireland and of David Sutton. So thank you to those women who put themselves through that reporting. In terms of his attack on LGB Alliance, it's pathetic. It is so unimportant compared to everything else. We know he's also attacked J.K. Rowling. We know he set up an entire campaign to say that Lisa Townsend was not a suitable police and crimes commissioner, and how he had a much better and closer relationship with Surrey Police, implying all the time that relationship enabled him to say that a police and crime commissioner who disagreed with his points of view should be removed from post. So what we've got here is an almost classic example of a brilliant predator taking advantage and almost playing out the role of what successful predators do. They take an organisation on side. He did it with the Surrey County Council, who funded him over the years for £140,000 of taxpayers' money. He did it with Surrey Police. He did it with Guildford Borough Council, with Runnymede Borough Council, with Surrey Heath. And he really has given the police and the public an absolute masterclass in how to deceive and how to engage with children so that he can fulfill his darkest fantasies. And he succeeded.
Well, as you say, this follows a very well-trodden model of people like Jimmy Savile, using charities, using public institutions, hiding within them, seeking legitimacy through them. The thing is, something like Jimmy Savile, and we've seen these examples repeatedly. We've seen them in all walks of life. Yet, strangely, within this sphere of the LGBTQ plus community, where's the safeguarding there?
Well, I think this should be it should be a turning point. The fact that the BBC hasn't reported at all, even though they were happy to report on Surrey Pride over
I think
the
they
years.
did, or the local state, Surrey, BBC Surrey,
I thought they were busy
done one
interviewing
thing.
a drag queen at the time.
think
However,
yeah. But one tiny thing compared to this is a big story.
This is a huge story, and what it says is there are a lot of parallels to be drawn with the rape grooming gang scandal. In the same way that those Pakistani Muslim men had a magical ability to get away with their crimes over and over and over again. Stephen Ireland saw the opportunity, and the opportunity that you and I have discussed before is that little plus, LGBTQIA plus. And one of the whistleblowers, Marian Harding, who was actually originally a friend of Stephen Ireland, had an argument with him and said, Stephen, you know, what is all this? You're now talking about polyamory. And what is it next? Is it going to be paedophilia? At which point he threw her out of the room, slammed the door, and that was the end of it. But she was one of the main whistleblowers to Joanna Killian, Chief Executive Officer of Surrey County Council, who she wrote to in 2021. So what we need to do is to explain there is a huge difference between an organisation which calls itself LGB. For example, LGB Alliance is about adults who are lesbian, gays and bisexuals. We care deeply about what's happening to young people today because we think they're being completely misled by those people who tell young kids, many of them likely to grow up gay or lesbian, that they could be born in the wrong body, and wouldn't it be a good idea to have healthy body parts removed? So safeguarding is at the heart of what we do, and it's at the heart of our own helpline. For example, in our helpline, we have communication online only. We never have one person
I
only.
believe he was the safeguarding head, and he had a telephone, right? Like a helpline a mobile phone that he wouldn't give to anybody else.
He set up his own helpline, which was called You Are Not Alone. It was one telephone, one mobile, and best practice is that the head of any organisation cannot be the safeguarding lead. That is best practice. It's strange that Mermaids, in its advert today for its new chief executive, said that the chief exec, would be head of safeguarding. So that's another thing to look out for. But Stephen would not relinquish the phone. Marian Harding again, who was quoted in Jill Foster's excellent article in The Telegraph, told us that she offered. She was DBS checked. She had training. She had experience. He had none of those things. He would not let go of that phone. So God knows how many other children may have been texted to and then talked to.
Vulnerable children.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've suggested, and we will continue to do this, because what I'd like to talk to you about in a few minutes is, what do we do about this? One thing is, clearly, Surrey County Council safeguarding has made a string of mistakes, not least in 2019, saying there's nothing to see here, when a member of the public wrote in about Stephen Ireland holding a dog lead with a girl who turned out to be 17 on the end of the lead, kneeling down beside him in fetish gear, pup gear, and he was celebrating International Fetish Day.
And little kids were coming by.
And the person at the Surrey Safeguarding, nothing to see here. Nothing. Now, what's happened here is, and may I have some of my lovely
Yes,
water?
of course, yeah.
What's happened to Surrey Pride is the worst thing that anyone could imagine. If you run an organisation, the worst thing that can happen is that one of your key members of staff, in fact, your leader, turns out to be a paedophile. Now, nobody in Surrey in Pride in Surrey itself, in Surrey County Council, in BBC Surrey, in Surrey Police. Nobody seems to be saying, oh my God, what has just happened? And what I fear is that because Stephen Ireland he founded Pride in Surrey.
They're trying to pretend that he didn't, by the way.
The statements from Pride in Surrey don't give me any confidence post-conviction and post-sentencing. 2 volunteers have been convicted. Wrong. This was Stephen Ireland's baby. Own it. And then look at your organisation and say, oh my God, what has just happened? And my fear, and these are the questions that must be asked, and my fear is that nothing has changed because pre the conviction, there were 5 directors. And I'm sorry, but I'll just run through the names. There's Stephen Ireland and David Sutton, who were convicted and are now jailed, those 2. Then there was Charlie Watts, who had been engaged to Stephen Ireland. And then there was Craig Spencer, who I don't know very much about. And then there is the chap who is now head of safeguarding, who's 22 years old. And he has taken over this phone, and he was in a throuple. And a throuple, for anybody who doesn't know, is a sexual relationship between 3 men with David Sutton and Stephen Ireland, and is now in a couple with the leader, Charlie Watts. So this is a very incestuous team. Before the convictions, the 5 of them were sitting around the Pride table making policy. Now there are 3, 2 are in jail, no other changes. No women, no new safeguarding figures brought in. It's the same
Still
people.
getting money from the council,
Yes.
still putting on Pride events.
Yes, and still mainly encouraging people to come to them for fun events at what they call the Pride Hub in Egham. Now, Stephen Ireland used to say, there will be sweeties, come to Pride Hub in Egham. And that suggests to me that they're trying to, and everything is family friendly. So I think what I'd be very, very clear to councillors and anybody involved in the public services in Surrey is, if something says it's inclusive, it's family friendly, or it's LGBTIA plus, be wary. Because this is happening around the country. This is not just Surrey.
I think the point is, be wary for everything. Like, no ideology, no institution should get a free pass. And it feels like that's, unfortunately, what has happened here that has partly led to this tragedy.
Yeah.
And it just means that just like the BBC, just like the church, just like... So, we have safeguarding for a reason. Yet for some reason, safeguarding here just went out of the window, and we saw the terrible price that was paid. And arguably, it went out the window because, golly gosh, you can't challenge this ideology.
You'll be a transphobe.
Yeah, and that's the fear. I should say Terence Herbert, the Chief Executive of Surrey County Council, says the council is reviewing any interactions regarding Stephen Ireland and Pride in Surrey during his time at the organisation. We are awaiting conclusions of that review. While we wholeheartedly support the LGBTQ+ community in Surrey, there is no funding currently committed to sponsoring Pride in Surrey. And in the statement, Pride in Surrey says concerns were raised about Stephen Ireland that were unrelated to charges against him. These concerns were investigated and, when necessary, reported to appropriate authorities. The concerns were investigated in line with our safeguarding policy. Due to the importance of confidentiality in safeguarding procedures, we cannot comment publicly about specific details relating to safeguarding concerns. This is to ensure people can raise concerns with the assurance that they are heard in confidence. As per a statement released in March in relation to the verdicts regarding Mr. Ireland and Mr. Sutton, we express solidarity with and give our heartfelt thoughts to the victims and families. We utterly condemn the crimes of both individuals.